Hi everyone, yes, in this video, it's quite interesting. I wanted to talk about sort of fascinations I've got with basically height and stuff and the scale of things. Because, I don't know, for me personally, I've always felt like height is important. Like for me, I'm 5'7", and I don't know, sometimes I feel like, when I go out about, I don't feel that short. I think I'm just below average, but it's interesting because like they say the average height of a man in the UK is 5'9", and I don't know. It kind of makes you feel, because like I said, I'm 5'7", but you know, if you're over 6 foot, I mean, what is the parameter of how of being like really tall? Then like is 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", like really tall or something? It depends, because I think it depends what country you go into. If you go to somewhere like India, a lot of people are probably quite smaller. If you go to somewhere like Scandinavia, maybe a bit taller. So it depends really. I don't think like the demographic for how tall you are. You know, it depends kind of all over the world really. But I think it's interesting because the average height for a woman is obviously smaller, so the woman is about 5'4", 5'5". But it's interesting because, well, another thing I wanted to mention was in terms of height and stuff. I think I mentioned this before in another video. I was saying about, you know, what I'm looking for in a woman, whatever, and I was saying about I want a man to be taller than me, because one of the things I wanted to mention was I wanted to kind of go against sort of the trend of, you know, when you go on TV shows and everything, and the woman, it's always like an inch or two smaller than the man if they're kind of up close together about to kiss or whatever. The woman is always like just a little bit smaller than the man. It's always like that kind of perfect difference in height. I think it would be interesting for me to kind of go out with a woman who's a bit taller than me, because I just think it would change like the perspective of a relationship. If say I'm 5'7", it's obviously not the hardest thing in the world to try and find a woman who's taller than me, like 5'10", 5'11". But I think it's interesting. I kind of want to go against sort of what sort of trendy, or what's the norm, I suppose. And I think that's quite interesting. I think kind of the idea of going, you know, I think it's interesting because I suppose if I was 6'4", 6'5", and say I want a taller woman, it would be harder. But there's a good amount of women probably taller than me. But I think it's interesting because I've always been fascinated by the scale of things, whether it's the scale of, you know, how tall I am or how tall people are, the tallest man or whatever, or how tall buildings are. I've always been fascinated by the scale of things, and it's interesting because I'm not the tallest person in the world. Would I have taken the extra step to maybe be a bit taller? I kind of sure was, maybe perhaps if I went to bed a bit earlier when I was growing up, I could have been a bit taller. But it's interesting. It's really interesting because yeah, I'm not saying I'm short, but there's a lot of, you know, a lot of people obviously are taller than me, and it's just really interesting. If say I'm 5'7", which isn't short, it isn't, honestly isn't short, I'm just below average. The average height for a man in the UK is 5'9". Even when I go out, I don't feel that short. I'm taller than a good amount. I'm around the same height as a good amount of women. Anyone who's taller than me is probably over 6 foot. It's not that much of a difference though, to be honest. So I'm certainly not short. I think it's very interesting. I think it's very, very interesting because height really shouldn't mean that much, not particularly. But when you're sort of maybe below average and sort of bored, that's funny because I looked up online, and apparently the start of being a dwarf was 4'10", so that's kind of a bit weird, isn't it? I don't know. But no, it is interesting. It is an interesting one, because I don't think I'm that small. But I want to make the most of it. Is what I'm trying to say. Like if I went out with a woman who was like smaller than me, obviously I could do, fair enough. But I'm saying, I don't know, because she'd have to be quite short to be smaller than, not quite short. But I'm not taking the mick out of myself. I'm just saying, I'm 5'7". You know, I'd rather make the most of the fact I'm not just below average and go out with a woman who's a little bit taller than me. What's the difference? So yeah. I've always been fascinated by height, whether it's the tallest skyscraper, tall people, and I'm fascinated like someone who's like 6'5". I mean, you know, I was measuring against the door frame. You know, I'd start touching the door frame, and it's with people who are that tall know they're that tall, because I always feel like people who are that tall think everyone else smaller than them is like a dwarf, but obviously not. So it's kind of a weird one, because what you've got to realise is I'm taller than most women. So the average height of women is probably like 5'5", 5'6". So I'm taller than most women, and I honestly I'm taller than most women, or they're the same height as me. I'm bang on average height. Well, I always think like, you know, 5'7", the average height's 5'9" with shoes, and I'm 5 foot, almost 5'8". It's kind of fun. And even when I was measuring myself the other day, just last night actually, I was measuring myself. I'm thinking 5'7", I'm actually a little bit below 5'7" from the top of their hairline. So if you measured me, and you kind of, you know, went, you know, kind of on the flat or whatever, instead of doing it from the top of your hand, you actually did it from the top of my skull or whatever. I think I'm actually maybe 5'5" or something, because the 5'7" bit comes from the top of my hairline. And I don't know, and even then I'm actually just below 5'7", so I think I'm actually maybe more about 5'6", 5'5", 5'6". So I don't know. Either way, it's not a big deal. I think I don't go out and feeling like I'm short. I'm not. I swear I don't. I never go out thinking, bloody, I'm tiny. I'm not. I'm taller than a lot of people. I'm taller than both my parents. But they're not really short or anything. They're just a bit shorter than me. But if I had my way, I'd be about 5'10". I wouldn't be 6 foot. I'll be 5'10". I think 5'10" is just above average. I'll be 5'10". 5'7", you know, is what it is. Is what it is. But that's the thing is, I was born on the 7th, and 7's my lucky number, so it's actually not all that bad. But yeah, I thought I'd say that. I thought it was interesting. You know, I am fascinated by heights, and like I said, another reason I should have mentioned it. I've just done a video on Reach on Amazon Prime Video. And he's 6'5", and I'm trying to like measure who has 6'5". I think Eddie Hearn's 6'5", and he's not the sort of guy you would look at and think he'd be massive. He doesn't have that sort of. He's kind of got sort of round. He doesn't look like the type who'd be that tall. And it's really interesting. I've become fascinated with heights and stuff. And even on the James Corden show, they had like a taller or shorter thing. And I'm fascinated by it. I'm honestly fascinated by heights and stuff. I always have been, even though I'm not even that tall myself. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm not the smallest person in the world. You could arguably say I'm short, but I'm not short. I think about 5'1", 5'2" is short. 5'7" is just. I mean, with shoes on, I'm almost 5'8", I think. So it's not too bad. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's very interesting.